we cannot dismiss out of hand the experience and the practices of any civilization. Because the fitrah is still there. It may be submerged, perverted, misunderstood, but it cannot be entirely erased because it is part of the human composite. You can't do away with it. You can't have a human being who is wholly ignorant and is wholly evil. Everybody has some inkling of the khilafah. Now, the virtue that we might wish to look at here is the virtue of tafakkur, or fikr, which is one of the pillars of the Quran's epistemology. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. This is a description of the ulul albab, and no appreciation of the Islamic understanding of education can be complete unless we understand this particular piece of Quranic vocabulary. The lub is, in the Quran's vision, the essence of man, and it's a word that means originally a seed or a core. In other words, that which is at the centre, perhaps invisible to outside observers, but that which is fruitful and can lead to a posterity and can lead to infinity. Its potentiality. And the ulul albab are the people who have this potentiality. And one of their attributes in these great culminating verses of Surah Al-Imran is that they remember Allah, they have dhikr, standing, sitting and on their sides, and they have fikr because they think about the way in which the heavens and the earth are created. Dhikr is a rare commodity in the modern world. Authentic dhikr is almost as rare amongst Muslims as amongst non-Muslims, because we tend to go through the motions more than experiencing the reality. But fikr is something that can be said to be universal. The problem of modernity is that our increasing knowledge of the diversity and the brilliance of Allah's creation has distracted us, because of its beauty and brilliance and precision, from getting the whole picture. We can't see the wood for the trees. Maybe one day they will come up with the equation or the theorem that finally cracks it. This is not beyond the bounds of possibility. Stephen Hawking, in his brief history of time, says if we can finally get the unified theory, then we shall know the mind of God. And he's not an atheist. He's a kind of careful agnostic who's hedging his bets and thinks, well, nothing that I have discovered in my laboratory or in my equations proves that there is no unifying principle behind existence. I just haven't cracked the final equation yet. My suspicion is that the final equation will not be disclosed to human mind, because then it would unfairly privilege a bunch of academics and mathematicians, and it's not Allah's will that academics should have privileged access to Him. It's His will that all human beings should equally have access to Him, whether they're intelligent or stupid, whatever their race, whatever their educational attainments, because He is just, and tawbah has to be available to all human beings. But who knows, maybe he will come across an equation that enables him to say, yep, there is one principle, one generative principle that brings about all the secondary principles of existence. Quite possible. But for the moment, he hasn't got there. Now we could say, using the Islamic vocabulary, that their state is that شغلتنا الأدلة عن المدلول. All of the pointers have distracted us from what is being pointed to. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who is the archetype of tafakkur, because this is what he was doing through his tahannuth on Jabal al-Nur, is contemplating the creation of the heavens and the earth, how everything is put together, superb symmetry, beauty, balance. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. You don't see any inconsistency in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the balance of the universe is one of the great marvels that has been uncovered by modern science. We all know, apparently, that if the energy generated by the Big Bang had been infinitesimally greater, then the formation of matter would have been impossible. If it had been infinitesimally smaller, then the process of expansion would have stopped almost instantaneously. So from the point of view of secular science, we're living in the great mysterious improbability. I think the statistics against it are somewhere in the order of 1 to the power of 50. Virtually an impossibility, but here we are, and they have something called the anthropic principle, which they think explains why we should happen to be here. If we weren't here, well then we wouldn't be talking about it, so in a sense the question is irrelevant. Here we are, and too bad. From a theologian's point of view, we would say, well, this makes it look as if faith, blind faith, is a much stronger principle for atheists than it is for believers. We have a coherent explanation. They just have a view of the world as being virtually an impossibility, but here it is and we just have to accept it. That's blind faith, if you like. But despite this marvel that there should be anything at all, they are nonetheless preoccupied with looking at the marvels. Hubble Space Telescope, with its deep field, can look further and further away, exploring the mysteries of the first moments of creation in the most remote galaxies. But what it can't tell us, what it hasn't been designed for, is why. And that can only be known, ultimately, through kashf. Because there is nothing in the logic of the created world that can irrefutably point to beyond its own nature. Philosophical arguments, higher mathematics, Hubble Space Telescope cannot reach beyond themselves. That's not what they're for. They're part of ard. They're part of the physical world. And it's one of the greatest errors in religion to think that you can come up with an argument, a rational argument, on the level of mentation, level of argumentation, of logic, that proves anything. Can't do that. The system is closed and is circular. You can point to the coherence of theism, and this is traditionally what ilm al-kalam in Islam has done. You can show how it is the best possible, best available explanation, but you cannot prove anything definitively, because the physical and human argumentation is in the realm of the physical. It's nazar, cannot reach the metaphysical. Metaphysical reaches the physical, not vice versa, because it's higher. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. It says in Surah Al-Baqarah that absar, or perceptions, anzar if you like, in the language of the mutakallimin, cannot attain him. How can they? A fallible human brain cannot attain the reality of the mind that created everything the Hubble Space Telescope can see. It's categorically different. But that mind certainly sees what we see and what we know. He is al-Raqib, the watcher. He is al-Shaheed, the witness.